When was the last time you actually stopped and thought about why the money you use every single day, that digital number on your banking app, why it actually works? I mean, we live in this age of instant global transactions, right? But the system holding all that value together is secretly, well, ancient and surprisingly complicated. Welcome to Book Talk Finance. This is the place where we take really monumental books, strip away all the noise, and pull out the most powerful, the most cutting edge insights that you need to know right now. And today, we're doing a complete teardown. We're looking at the mechanics of modern digital money and, crucially, discovering this ingenious cryptographic revolution that aims to rewrite the rules entirely.
Yeah, and the book guiding us through this is the basics of Bitcoins and blockchains. It's really essential because it doesn't just treat Bitcoin as some, mysterious digital token floating out there. It puts it right in the context of history, traditional finance, and computer science. It explains what this new asset class really is, maybe why it was needed, and, well, how successful it might eventually be.
And the author, Anthony, he's got such a perfect vantage point for this. I mean, this is someone who was a former FX spot trader at Barclays Capital, right? Then worked as a technologist at Credit Suisse, and then made the jump to an early crypto startup, itBit, before becoming director of research at R3. So he's really seen how the legacy financial plumbing works, up close and personal. He gets its limitations.
Exactly. That dual perspective, it allows the book to explain the established system very clearly first, before showing you precisely where this digital alternative is trying to disrupt things.
Okay, so our mission today is pretty straightforward. We're going on a journey together to understand what money really is. We'll expose some of those hidden inefficiencies in digital transactions today, especially that reliance on gatekeepers. And then we'll learn how cryptography provided the toolkit needed for a truly censorship-resistant alternative.
Right. And let's start with something pretty foundational, maybe a bit of a shocker. That origin story of money we all kind of learned. You know, the one where money was invented to replace the clumsy system of bartering. Adam Smith really popularized that idea back in 1776.
Yeah, I remember that from school, but you're saying that's not actually true. According to the research cited in our book, that whole idea is, well, likely pure fiction. Apparently, there isn't much solid anthropological evidence for these widespread, complex barter systems just being suddenly replaced by money.
That's exactly right. Instead of money being a fix for barter, the sources here suggest money often grew out of systems of debt, credit, social obligations,
Yeah.
things like that. But if we look at what historically did function as money, we see this really crucial evolution.
Okay, this is where it gets kind of fun, actually. The cow.
Right.
You wouldn't think it, but the cow is arguably the most enduring form of money. It was used as commodity money way back, like 9,000 BCE. It had obvious intrinsic value, right? You could eat it, you could breed it, use it for milk.
Absolutely. That intrinsic value model, though, it eventually gave way to what we call extrinsic value. Around 2,250 BCE, maybe 2,150 BCE, in places like Cappadocia. This is when standardized silver lumps started to appear. Their value is guaranteed by the state, by some authority. So the value shifted, didn't it? From the physical utility of the asset, like the cow, to its scarcity, its durability, and importantly, that backing by authority.
And the author makes this a brilliant point here. The arguments people must have had back then, why should I trust this shiny silver lump? It doesn't feed my family. Well, those are the exact same arguments we hear today about Bitcoin, which many people say lacks intrinsic value. We've literally been debating the same fundamental concept for 4,000 years. It's amazing.
It really is. And if you're looking for the original financial regulator, well, look no further than Hammurabi. Around 1800 BCE, his famous code included some of the very first laws governing lending and banking operations. So regulation isn't some modern invention. It's always been a reaction to the complexity that comes with shared value systems.
Okay, let's fast forward then to modern digital finance. Physical cash, like a dollar bill. It's a great bearer asset. It's anonymous. The asset is right there in your hand. But obviously, you can't instantaneously zap it across continents.
Exactly. And that inability to transfer physical tokens easily across distance is really what forced the invention of digital money.
Yeah.
But here's the key flaw, the sort of the trade-off that came with that invention. It forced us to rely on trusted third-party bookkeepers, your banks, your e-wallets, your PayPals, Venmos. When you look at your account balance online, that isn't actual physical cash sitting somewhere with your name on it. It's actually recorded as a liability on the bank's books. the bank owes you that money.
Right. So the settlement of digital money, it doesn't happen with tokens actually changing hands. It happens because these trusted intermediaries, these banks, they just adjust their ledgers. They increase one balance, decrease another. And that works perfectly if, say, Alice and Bob use the same bank.
Hmm.
It's simple, right? Instantaneous book transfer.
It is. But the real complexity, the part most users never see, is what happens between different banks. Interbank payments are behind the scenes and operational and, frankly, a risk nightmare. Banks don't actually send virtual banknotes in a van back and forth to settle up at the end of the day.
No, definitely not. So how does it work then? They rely on these complex methods like correspondent banking, is that right? So Bank A, wanting to pay someone who banks at Bank B, has to actually maintain a special account at Bank B. A nostro account, is that the term? Like Bank A's checking account held at Bank B. And the whole system then depends on that account having enough funds to make the payment.
Precisely. And this reliance on correspondent banking as well, it's highly inefficient. It also creates significant credit risk, especially for smaller institutions. Our sources here point at a 2015 World Bank survey that showed almost half of smaller banks were actually facing declining relationships with these big clearing banks. Why? Because the compliance burden, the risk assessment, it all leads to financial exclusion. It shuts smaller, maybe perceived as riskier banks out of the global system.
Wow. So it's this complexity and the inherent need for these gatekeepers in traditional digital finance that Bitcoin's creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, was trying to eliminate. And to do that, he or she or they needed the absolute best tools for building trust without relying on people or institutions. And those tools came from cryptography.
Exactly. Cryptography is fundamentally the science of secret language. It's the tech that underlies the ifs in HTTPS, keeping your data secure when you browse online. And the key innovation Bitcoin really leans on is asymmetric cryptography. This involves public and private keys.
Okay, so you generate a pair, a public key, which you can share with the world. It's like a public address, right, where people can send you encrypted stuff. And then a private key, which is your secret password. Only you know it, and you use it for decryption or for signing things. What's revolutionary is you never have to share that secret private key just to receive information securely.
That's right. And that is a massive leap forward compared to older symmetric systems. Think of like a Caesar cipher. Simple stuff, where the same key was used for both encoding and decoding. That meant the secret key had to be constantly shared, constantly exposed to risk. Asymmetric avoids that.
Okay, then we add hash functions, which I like the analogy in the book, thinking of them as a digital fingerprint. It's a one-way mathematical function, something like SHA-256. You can feed it any amount of input, a word, a sentence, a whole movie, a massive hard drive, and it instantly spits out this fixed-length deterministic output, a string of characters.
Deterministic is key, yes. Same input always yields the exact same hash output. But here's the genius part. If you change the input data even slightly, like by a single character, maybe even just a space, the output hash changes wildly, completely unpredictably. This makes the hash function a perfect tool for proving commitment, like saying, I predict this outcome, hashing it and revealing the prediction later. Or, crucially, for instantly demonstrating that data has been tampered with. It's easy to create that fingerprint, but basically computationally impossible to work backward from the fingerprint to the original data. It's a one-way street.
Got it. And these tools, the keys and the hashes, they combine into the digital signature. So when you sign a transaction in the crypto world, you use your private key and the specific transaction data. And crucially, unlike my scribbled wet ink signature on a check, which always looks the same, a digital signature is mathematically unique to the exact data being signed at that moment.
Precisely. So if someone tried to alter the transaction details afterwards, say changing the payment amount from $10 to $100, or changing the recipient, the signature instantly becomes invalid. The math just doesn't work anymore. It's tamper evidence security woven right into the data itself. It proves both authenticity, who signed it, and integrity, that the data hasn't changed. And this brings us to a really critical reality check about owning digital assets like Bitcoin. When you set up a crypto wallet, it doesn't actually store Bitcoins or Ether or whatever token. What it stores are your private keys.
Right. And this is such a huge shift in responsibility for the user, isn't it? Because if you lose that private key, if your hard drive crashes and you didn't back it up or you forget your password phrase, there is no bank you can call. There's no forgot my password link. You lose access to your assets forever. Full stop. That's why hardware wallets, things like Trezor or Ledger, are so popular. They're basically specialized little devices designed specifically to keep those critical private keys offline, air-gapped, away from internet-connected computers that are, constantly under a potential attack.
Yeah, it's a different security model entirely. So Having established this cryptographic toolkit, the keys, the hashes, the signatures, we can now really appreciate Bitcoin's core design goal, which was eliminating the need for trust in those intermediaries, those institutions we talked about earlier.
Yeah, Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper abstract laid it out so clearly. It said, a purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. Straightforward goal. Radical implications.
Totally. That required engineering censorship resistance right into the protocol. Bitcoin achieves this in a few key ways. First, permissionless accounts. Your public key is your account number. No central administrator can stop you from creating one or receiving funds. Second, decentralized bookkeeping. The ledger, the history of all transactions, isn't held by one bank. It's replicated by thousands of independent bookkeepers or nodes all over the world.
Okay, so if one single party, maybe a government trying to block a transaction, or one rogue bank, or just one malicious node tries to censor something or manipulate a record, their version of the ledger just gets ignored. It's instantly rejected by the honest majority of the global network who have the correct, agreed-upon version.
Exactly. That's the power of decentralization. But the single biggest technical hurdle Satoshi had to overcome was the double spending problem. In the purely digital realm, data is easy to copy. So how do you prevent someone from copying a digital token like a digital coin and spending it twice without a central authority watching over everything?
That does sound like the core problem. How did Bitcoin solve it? The answer was proof of work, right? That's what I keep hearing about. The network basically forced these block creators, the miners, to expend massive amounts of energy and time. How? By requiring them to perform this tedious, repetitive hashing, mixing the transaction data with a random number, a nonce, over and over, until the resulting hash output happens to fall below a specific, very difficult target number set by the network.
That's the essence of it. It's like a computational lottery. And this laborious work, this proof of work, serves two really critical functions. One, it prevents something called a Sybil attack, where one attacker tries to flood the network by creating thousands of fake identities or nodes. Proof of work makes that prohibitively expensive. And, crucially, it establishes consensus. How the network agrees on the single true history of transactions. It does this through the longest chain rule.
The longest chain rule? Okay, explain that. That's the protocol rule that says if two miners happen to find a valid block, solving the puzzle at almost the exact same time, creating two competing valid transaction records, the network sort of waits a bit and then defaults to adopting whichever chain of blocks grows longer first, the one that has the most accumulated proof of work built on top of it. And that's what makes the ledger effectively immutable, right? Because changing a block way back in the history would require redoing all that incredibly difficult hashing work for that block, and every single block that came after it, faster than the rest of the network, is building the honest chain.
You've nailed it. It becomes computationally infeasible to rewrite history. The energy cost would be astronomical. And why do miners bother with all this work and energy expenditure? Why participate? Because they're incentivized. They get paid through two mechanisms. First, the transaction fees that users attach to their payments to get them included in a block. And second, the block reward. This is the newly minted BTC that the protocol allows the winning miner to claim for creating the block. This block reward famously halves roughly every 4 years in an event called the halving. This mechanism is what controls the supply issuance, capping the total number of Bitcoins that will ever exist at slightly under 21 million, projected to be reached around the year 2140. Unless, of course, the community collectively agrees to change those rules, which is theoretically possible, but highly unlikely.
Interesting. Now, just a quick point on Satoshi Nakamoto, the pseudonymous creator. That anonymity, the book points out, is actually pretty central to Bitcoin's ongoing success and ethos, isn't it? Because if the real person or group behind Satoshi were known, their opinions, their voice would instantly centralize the project's direction. People would look to them for guidance. And that's the exact opposite of Bitcoin's decentralized goal.
Absolutely. And let's not forget the financial centralization risk, too.
Yeah.
Satoshi is estimated to control somewhere around 1 million BTC mined in the very early days. The movement of even a fraction of those coins, which would be worth tens of billions of dollars today, is intensely monitored by the entire crypto world. Any decision by Satoshi to move or sell those coins would undoubtedly have a massive impact on the market price and sentiment. So in a way, their continued silence is a form of governance, maintaining stability.
Okay, wow. So we've really covered some immense ground here today. We journeyed all the way from ancient forms of value like cows and silver lumps, through the intricacies and, frankly, the reliance on gatekeepers in the modern digital payment system, all the way to understanding this ingenious, cryptographically secured system, Bitcoin, which was specifically designed for censorship-resistant value transfer without needing those traditional gatekeepers.
Exactly. And the result is this new asset class, one that's proven remarkably resilient in some ways, but also, as the text confirms, historically incredibly volatile. Those extreme price swings, including crashes of up to 80%, seem almost cyclical and kind of baked into the asset's relatively short history so far. But despite that volatility, the core innovation, that concept of trustless value transfer enabled by cryptography that remains intact, and it's genuinely revolutionary.
So let's land this plane with a final thought to mull over, something looking towards the future of finance. We've focused mostly today on public, permissionless blockchains like Bitcoin, where that censorship resistance is paramount. But as the book notes, the business world is also heavily adopting private, permissioned blockchains, for things like B2B data sharing, supply chain management, settling internal trades.
Right. And the provocative idea the book leads us with is that the technical distinction between these two worlds of the public, decentralized chains, and the private, more centralized chains might eventually just fade away, at least from the end user's perspective. As technology like cross-chain bridges and interoperability standards improves, assets might start to move so easily, so seamlessly between these different types of networks that the choice of the underlying blockchain network could become as irrelevant to you, the user, as, say, choosing which specific email server your Gmail client happens to use to deliver a message today. You just don't care. It just works. And that level of seamless integration, if it happens, could truly redefine digital finance as we know it.
That is a fascinating place to leave it. Whether you're actively tracking the markets, just curious about the future of global payments, or maybe just trying to make sense of the news headlines. Having this kind of deep dive into the history, the mechanics, and the cryptographic underpinnings is, I think, absolutely essential knowledge these days. Thank you so much for joining us for this Book Talk Finance. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel for more discussions and talks like this one, where we unpack complex ideas quickly and clearly. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.